In my last video, I showed critical evidence that manipulation of the internet is real. I talked about two entities. One was Jigsaw, which is a division of Alphabet, and their partner entities, one of which was Moonshot CVE. Some of you didn't like what I revealed because, as expected, Google and Moonshot CVE have a strong political side, and that was apparent in the data. However, what is not apparent is that there are other players and their objectives may be completely different. What I want to explain today is that Jigsaw and Moonshot CVE are merely examples of a bigger problem involving multiple entities engaged in manipulating information on the internet. All of these companies have the same approach, which is what is laid out by Moonshot CVE. Find, which is to identify, understand, by testing focus groups, and intervene by manipulating the data. What I want to do today is to discuss how any player can intervene and manipulate our internet. I want to show you that it is easily done and what other things they can do, and we'll see if we can beat this. Second, I want to focus on the find part and show you that this whole idea of manipulating us will fall short if they can't identify the target population. Are you ready to learn? If so, stay right there. I'm on the platform Odyssey.com, and I'm now one of the top creators on there. Just for insurance, in case I get deplatformed, please follow me there using the link in the description. I have a VPN service, BytzVPN. My company also sells de-Google phones. These products are made to make your identity disappear on the internet, and hopefully this video will explain why these products are important. If you're interested in them, they are on my app BraxMe. The link is in the description. Today I will introduce you to a category of data collection companies which I call offensive data mining companies. Their goal is not just to collect data. These types of companies intend to use the data in an offensive way to alter behaviors or perceptions. They nicely call this intervention. In the old days, we would just call what these companies do as brainwashing. This, of course, is nothing new in geopolitics. Governments have been playing this game for generations. What is new is that this is now a capability of private companies against private individuals. What I want to do today is to discuss the intervene part as it relates not just to Moonshot CVE, but to any player that wants to manipulate our internet. I want to show you that it is easily done, and what other things they can do, and we'll see if we can beat this. Second, I want to focus on the find part and show you that this whole idea of manipulating us will fall short if they can't identify the target population. First, let's talk about the intervene step. Someone said I did not prove the manipulation of the internet in that last video on Google search. Yes, I talked about the mechanics of intervention and the project goals of Moonshot CVE, but no, they did not specifically document publicly how they did the manipulation. As stated on their websites, the manipulation design occurs by doing focus groups on the targeted population. Then they check responses to the specific content they add, likely to see if the target clicks on the YouTube videos or alternate content they want the targeted user to see. I have no idea if they found a way to measure results of keeping some individual from being radicalized. At least the approach is clear. They stated that the content is framed in such a way that the alternate content is on top and basically makes use of a well-known meme on Google search, which is Google page 2. This is actually quite interesting. Our behavior on search engines of not searching further down for content is actually being used against us. Moonshot CVE stated that their intervention comes in the form of altered Google search results, targeted results. Keep the preferred content on page 1 and move all the other actual search content to page 2 and beyond. So this meme, rather than just being an indicator of pop culture, was actually weaponized. Just keep this in mind because someone used our expected behavior to manipulate us. Let me introduce you to other methods of manipulation of information that can occur beyond Google search. Another project of Jigsaw is a product called Perspective, which is used by companies like the New York Times to basically have an AI monitor comments on their website. Of course, something similar is being used by Facebook. It could be the same project. You can also see this tech used on YouTube and Twitter. At least the Google version is related to a Google project called BERT. It stands for Bidirectional Encoder Representations from Transformers. There was another name for this project in the past, but I can't find the old reference. What this is a new capability of Google to interpret context from a series of words, rather than just trying to understand it literally. The point of this AI is to basically interrupt someone posting comments publicly where the algorithm deems the comments as censorable. In theory, it's supposed to understand a context like sarcasm, basically understanding it like a human can. This becomes an AI responsible for filtering content. If used against you, it can be quite interesting. It can be empowered in an instant without human interaction. As advertised, the project perspective is supposedly aimed at toxicity in social media. But its capabilities obviously go beyond that. It could basically suppress any thought that the platform wants to suppress. Now let me introduce you to something more sinister. If you understand the capabilities of the three-letter agencies, I can tell you right now that if you're an identified target, then what you see on the internet can be changed in a more drastic way. It should be possible to actually change the entirety of your internet or some parts of it with a technique called packet injection. Someone with the global reach of a three-letter agency could do that and, for example, feed alternate information or fake news. This has some military consequences. Imagine feeding a country false information to confuse the population right before a military attack. There have been many war games that use this now as a strategy. Let me then go theorize at another level, which again is technically quite possible and feasible. And this is to identify the target parties, for example like generals, and plant malware in the target's computers that could alter something as simple as DNS, for example. So instead of visiting a website that you know, you actually can be redirected to an alternate website, perhaps selectively, and make it appear like you're still on YouTube, Google, or whatever it is you're doing. Another advanced possibility is once malware is inserted, then a fake TLS root certificate can be implanted on your device, and then someone can watch your traffic to all encrypted sites. This is actually pretty easy to do and is already occurring when you install an antivirus like Avast. I'll make a video of this again so you can see. Another company engaged in offensive data manipulation is a company called Palantir. Mostly Palantir is an agent of the state, and they use their massive databases to sell services to the intelligence community as well as law enforcement. In the city of Los Angeles, Palantir's data is used specifically by the Los Angeles Police Department. Once a person gets entered into the Palantir target database, the person then becomes a surveillance target of the state. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or innocent. This is a crazy tool for manipulation of a community. In Los Angeles, it was used to identify those who might join a gang and then harass them with traffic stops to let you know Big Brother is watching. In other words, Palantir is the tool for pre-crime. I'll link the articles that explain some of what Palantir does in the description. I'm sure Palantir is involved in other state-level attacks to spread disinformation. We'll never know how deep. The point is that the mercenary data companies like Jigsaw, Palantir, Moonshot CVE, and many others, including intelligence agencies all over the world, are using data in an offensive manner to change the information a population can see. There should be no doubt that the intent is about power, whether at the state or corporate level. Do we have a chance against this? Let's examine this more closely. In the case of Moonshot CVE, the approach to target a population using Google Page 1 is possible because the average person no longer works to get information. Information is spoon-fed in convenient chunks. It has to be on page 1. Someone said to me in a comment, 20 minutes for a video is too long. Make it 6 minutes. That, my friends, is an example of spoon-fed information. The reason my channel is different is that I get you interested enough that most of you will watch 20 minutes of my video by going through a topic in depth. That's what is different about me. I don't just highlight a few headlines. I go through it in depth. The way to make manipulation fail is by never accepting data at their face value. I encourage you all to do deep research about a topic Instead of dropping a comment on a video that shows you didn't bother to understand, you react from your gut based on what you hear from mainstream media from a particular side. We have to stop the TLDR mentality and start doing research. The other part that promotes manipulation is that perhaps intentionally big tech and the powers to be appear to be promoting the idea of the echo chamber. Certainly quite apparent on Twitter, for example, and all the other platforms where there is significant censoring. What happens then is that people of similar viewpoints converge on particular platforms, and we end up with sites like Parler and Gab providing a separate echo chamber from a Twitter and Facebook echo chamber. In echo chambers, you only listen to one side of the issue and to people who believe like you do. This promotes two bad results. One is that it causes more polarization, extremism, and radicalization. And second, it becomes a haven for fake news since there is no one around to challenge with an alternative answer. Since we all accept this now as a normal part of our social media experience, we are now pawns with some smart people understanding how people now think and are quick to manipulate us. We may be being polarized intentionally. Maybe we are being torn apart from within. The solution is not to rely on one source of information, to search for balance, to be open to see the other side, and this means not taking any information at face value. In other words, do not behave like sheep. Let me get to the second part of this discussion, which is to talk about the find or identification element used by these offensive data mining companies. We can all be manipulated if we allow ourselves to be profiled and categorized. This is in essence the intent of the find step. In my last video, I showed you how Moonshot CVE had specific statistics of their target based on track profiles and search engine behavior. Look at the kind of details shown here. In other words, through Google's tools, they've identified each individual and then classified them according to their activity on the internet and specifically their search traffic. And from that, they're able to then take step 2, which is understand the target, and then step 3, intervene. If you follow this model, it is clear that the problem starts with find. And by the way, this has been the focus of this channel since day one. Achieving our independence from manipulation comes from not being found. In other words, to prevent big tech from associating our activities with an identity. I've tried to explain this in many very technical videos, but I'll try to be as non-technical as possible here. The whole point of this channel is that privacy actually prevents us from being profiled and categorized into cohorts. Privacy protects us because by not being found, they cannot begin to understand how to manipulate us. Privacy stops them cold because the big databases only function with trackable behavior. Your behavior is in the data that leaks out over the internet. Your identity on the internet makes the behavior trackable. Without an identity, the behavioral data is worthless. Privacy means protect your identity. Those of you who are new to my channel may not know the basic elements of how to prevent the information powers from tracking us. Basically, what are now accepted as the conveniences of the last decade are now the basis of this evil corruption. So let me just talk about a few of these conveniences which started the find capability for identification. Number 1, mobile smartphone. When smartphones became mainstream in 2007, they did not yet have the capability of today's phones. Do not believe the lies that tell you about Apple and Android phones. A regular smartphone is completely trackable. All your locations are recorded. All your app use is recorded. All websites you visit are tracked. All of your search activities are compiled. I explain why I say all of this in other videos. The one unique thing about a phone that is different from other computing devices is that it is always with you and it is always on. The next problem is that your phone has a unique fingerprint. I call it a device fingerprint. Whatever activity emanates from your device, it can be recorded as an identity with all other behaviors and thus starts the most detailed source of identity for big tech. Now, fortunately, this is beatable. I have many videos on this, and I refer to the solution as the Google phones. The Google phone is basically de-Appled as well, because there's no centralized big tech monitoring a Google phone. It basically removes the biggest capability of big tech so far, and that is to tie your activities to an identity. It doesn't matter that you use the same apps on a Google phone. The fact is, without an overseer that can monitor what you're doing, each app works by itself on the phone without knowledge of anything outside its own sandbox. The other solution is to rely more on computers instead of mobile phones. Number 2, speech recognition. This is one of the more recent dangers and conveniences that is used against us. First of all, even though I repeat this over and over, the vast majority of people don't understand that if you talk to your phone or your Amazon Echo, you are in fact talking to big tech, and they have a copy of your conversation, which they can keep for as long as they want. The most obvious benefit to big tech is that they now have all your search queries in a handy spot. For those not using Google Search, Apple now has an equivalent database with your Siri search. This type of convenience came with a misunderstanding of the technology. Back in the old days, speech recognition was done at the device itself, using the CPU of the device. Nowadays, speech recognition is done in the cloud, at home base of Google, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. I talked to many of you who dictate text messages, dictate memos, letters, and so on. So in fact, you are sharing your thoughts and ideas to big tech, which then allow them to profile you and identify you. Then there's a second element of voice, which is the capability of three-letter agencies, and this is the voice print. The quick idea of a voice print immediately profiles your connections, perhaps even noting that you were at a friend's house that has a voice command appliance. The solution, of course, is simple. Forgo the convenience of speech AI and happily press buttons on your phone or device. Though it may be a problem when your friend's house has an Amazon Echo, since you have no control over that. Number 3, web browsers. The benign web browser has been turned from convenience to evil. This is one of the biggest evils perpetrated by Google and Facebook. Using something called browser fingerprinting, they can actually track your movements on the internet from your browser use and finally extract your identity from it. This is also one of the most difficult threats to eliminate. Researchers for these companies found that there is a way to extrapolate an identity from a browser simply by knowing your device and how you've uniquely configured it. I have several videos on browser fingerprinting, but fortunately I came up with a solution that works very well, and I call it browser isolation. The solution is to use several browsers, one for Google logged in, one for Google not logged in, and one for non-Google sites, and never use Facebook. The video explains why I have it set up like that. Browser fingerprinting also includes being tracked by an IP address, which we all have when we go to the internet. Fortunately, this is solved by a VPN or using only cell data. Number 4, Facebook. Now this deserves its own category. Facebook has become a communications convenience for many families. There's no need to call each other, do personal invites to parties, wish people happy birthday with a phone call. Facebook is the place where everyone already is, so people think that this convenience cannot be undone. This platform, unfortunately, is central to the fine element of big tech, because the biggest promise of Facebook is that it knows your true identity, and it is crowdsourced. Even if you never post a single thing on it, your friends and family will be there to ensure that your identity is very clear to Facebook. And when your identity is apparent, then all your behavior becomes trackable even on other websites, and the big tech succeeds and moves on to other steps of the plan, which are to understand and intervene. Unfortunately, because Facebook is rooted in your identity, and which is the same with another identity-based site, LinkedIn, these are all sources of ultra evil for me. So the only solution is not to play the game, if you remember the movie War Games. Number 5, centralization. This is a more general convenience which is apparent when we basically put all of our data into one single ecosystem, like all Apple products, iCloud, or if we go Google and use Google Drive, Google Photos, Gmail, Google Search, and so on. The problem here is that we've allowed large companies to have a centralized record of each of us. Palantir, by the way, does not have a platform to extract data from us. Instead, they use a combination of public identifiers like our real name and address and combine social media data with data they get from the government, from health, insurance, financial records, driving records, public data, traffic lights, freeway sensors. Regardless of how they acquired it, this is the major source of evil because we allow these entities centralized control of our data. By the way, it will be highly likely that big tech will share their data with three-letter agencies. They've done so in the past. The solution here is partial, and that is to spread out your data on the internet into multiple identities. This makes it difficult for these identities to attach behaviors to everything we do. We cannot change what is known about us with our real names from companies like Palantir, but we can certainly keep them from associating it with our Gmail or YouTube activity by keeping the names different. It should be apparent that we can only be safe if we alter our behavior and we take the steps to remove the big tech source of power, which is your identifiable data. So, if we all just become more aware of how we can be found and manipulated, then those who are well informed will be able to beat the system and achieve intellectual independence. Of course, you can make your behavioral data disappear from the internet by disappearing from the grid. If you can do that and become a Luddite, that will certainly work, at least for the future. But that's not what I teach in this channel. All I teach you is how to remove your identity from your data so that tracking cannot occur. What I teach in this channel is to disrupt the find capability of the opposition threat. The end result of privacy is freedom, freedom of expression and freedom from manipulation. That is the big picture of what I teach. My privacy channel has a secondary goal. As a society, most of us live in a democracy where the rule of law is decided by a majority. And here lies the problem. Unless a majority is educated about the dangers of the internet and manipulation, then the pacified sheep will decide who controls the country, and the rest of us will have no alternative but to just follow along. So the more people understand what's at stake and appreciate privacy, the safer we will all be. So please help me with this goal by sharing this video with others and subscribing to this channel. This will bring more visibility to this topic and hopefully convert more sheep. Thank you for watching. See you later.